My name is Amber. I'm 25 and I'm terrified. What's happening to me defies explanation, and I desperately need someone to believe me. It started on a Monday afternoon. I returned to my apartment after my shift at the coffee shop to find all of my girlfriend's belongings gone. The only thing remaining was a folded piece of paper propped against our ocean mist scented candle on our small wooden dining table. It looked like something from a bad movie. The note read, "I need space. I left my part of the rent with Marco. Don't worry about returning my kitchen stuff." I'm barely paraphrasing. The message was cold and impersonal. Exactly how Riley had been acting since we moved in together. Whether it was the pressure of adulthood, post-college reality hitting her, or simple restlessness, I couldn't say. Honestly, I felt it too, and I'm somewhat ashamed to admit I was relieved she left first so I could keep our apartment. In the brief moment it took to read those few sentences, my emotions skipped through grief like a flat rock across a pond, only sinking when it reached acceptance. Riley was gone, and I was okay with that. I called my friend Danny, and after enduring her lukewarm sympathy, I asked if she wanted to go out that evening. "Go where?" Danny asked, sounding confused. "Like a club or something?" "Yeah, why not?" Are you sure you're feeling all right?" The uncertainty in her voice was clear. I'd never been one for nightlife. The last time I drank was half a glass of champagne at my sister's wedding 2 years ago. Riley wasn't into the bar scene, so I generally avoided it too. "I'm fine. Just feel like letting loose." I cringed at my choice of words. "If you say so." She still sounded doubtful, which was fair. "Meet at 9. Perfect." We met at a place called the Rustic Barrel, a trendy gastropub Danny frequented. The interior featured exposed brick walls and reclaimed wood furniture, all bathed in the warm glow of vintage Edison bulbs. It had great ambience. I've always been drawn to that industrial chic aesthetic. They offered an extensive craft beer selection, but Danny suggested I try a whiskey sour, saying it might be more approachable for a newcomer. She was right. It was tangy and sweet, and before I realized it, I'd finished 2 glasses, with only crushed ice and mangled lemon slices remaining. That's when I first noticed him. He was attractive, with a neatly trimmed beard framing his strong jawline. His hazel eyes surveyed the various patrons around him, though he didn't engage with anyone. He drummed his fingers against a half-empty glass of dark beer, the condensation dampening his fingertips. I watched him as he observed everyone else. Eventually, his gaze drifted toward me and paused. Our eyes locked. The drinks must have dampened my usual reservations, because suddenly I was standing and walking in his direction. We exchanged greetings, and he seemed friendly enough. His name was Nathan. He was in a PhD program at the university I'd graduated from. I'll omit the name for privacy. And I noticed his left hand bore no ring. We connected immediately and talked for nearly an hour. As we approached midnight, I made a suggestion, and he agreed. I said goodnight to a shocked Danny and left with him. It was reckless, but I was in a reckless mood. I wanted to do something uncharacteristic. 2 whiskey sours and you're tipsy? He laughed, eyes on the road. "Not much of a drinker, huh?" "I never drink," I yawned. "But I'm newly single. Special occasion, you know?" "I see." He smiled. "Happy to be your rebound." Pointed at him. "Hey, at least the rebound is what scores points." "That's definitely not how that works." "Whatever. You know what I mean." We arrived at my apartment building, and I invited him up. By then, I was tired and slightly buzzed, but determined. I had one specific goal, and if I hadn't been so focused on that, I might have realized I never told him where I lived. The evening proceeded as you might expect. I woke the next morning alone in bed, my blankets in a heap on the floor. He hadn't left a note, a strand of hair, or even a trace of his cologne. He had vanished from my life, which was honestly fine with me. For a moment, I felt a twinge of disappointment that I wouldn't see him again, but I quickly dismissed it. It was a fun, impulsive night. Nothing more. Tuesday passed uneventfully, and it wasn't until late Wednesday afternoon that I noticed something unusual. It began as a dull ache low in my abdomen, not my stomach. Lower, near my reproductive organs. like the familiar cramp before menstruation. That was odd, though, because my cycle had ended just over a week ago. There was no way I was starting again so soon. Fear shot through me like electricity. Oh no, was I pregnant? No. I took several deep breaths. No way. 3 days after? Impossible. I researched it anyway. 1 to 2 weeks after conception, according to medical websites. That ruled out pregnancy then, unless I was experiencing some extraordinarily rare situation, but that seemed highly unlikely. The realization hit me like a freight train. 3 dreaded letters, STI. I spent the next few hours scrolling through medical websites and health forums, comparing symptoms and following citation links as my anxiety rose and fell in hot waves. An online medical chatbot unhelpfully suggested I might have ovarian cysts, but assured me they were treatable if caught early. Great. Nothing was conclusive. No one could diagnose a pinching sensation in the lower abdomen after intimate contact, which made perfect sense. I was probably overthinking everything. So, I did what I should have done hours earlier and called Danny. I don't know what to tell you, Amber. This is kind of on you. I picked at a stain on my sweatpants. So you think I might be right? I have an STI. Listen, I work at a bookstore. How am I supposed to know? Don't you have a doctor? I saw someone for my annual exam last year, but I'm not sure if she's still at that practice. Just call the office. I'm sure someone there can help. I could hear the thinly veiled frustration in her voice, which was justified. Why was I making her deal with my mistake? I was a grown woman. I should handle this myself. Thanks, Danny. Sure thing. I ended the call and rested my forehead on the cool surface of the table. But I hate medical appointments. The women's health clinic squeezed me in for Thursday, which was practically miraculous given typical wait times. By Thursday morning, the discomfort had intensified. It was less of a cramp and more of a stabbing sensation, like when you have a deep splinter that you can't quite reach. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic with undertones of cleaning products and metal hanging in the air. After numerous childhood hospital visits, I'd grown familiar with the unsettling scent of sterility as if it were comfort food. My father had been something of a health alarmist. He used my insurance coverage like an all-access pass, taking me to the emergency room for every cough, stomachache, or unusual rash. This instilled in me a profound aversion to waiting rooms and examination tables, that timeless limbo that drove me to near madness. As I waited for my name to be called, I mindlessly scrolled through social media to distract myself from my anxiety. I needed to believe this pain was probably nothing, just like those countless unnecessary hospital trips from my youth. That persistent cough had not been pneumonia. Those muscle aches had not been meningitis. That stomach bug was just food poisoning, not salmonella. Ironically sad that influenza was what ultimately took my father. When I was finally called in, my fear of waiting transformed into dread of diagnosis. What if it actually was something serious like cancer? What if I only had weeks to live? Should I start preparing my affairs? Looking back, cancer would have been a blessing. The medical assistant went through the standard procedures: medical history, vital signs, urine sample, etc. Finally, after more waiting, Dr. Patel arrived. I immediately told her I suspected an STI based on my research. She nodded sympathetically and said she appreciated my input but needed to follow proper diagnostic protocol. I don't recall all her questions, but my answers in this medical choose-your-own-adventure seemed to lead us to one uncomfortable conclusion: a pelvic examination. I'll spare you the uncomfortable details, but I was more than a little embarrassed. Do you feel anything unusual? Dr. Patel asked. Besides the obvious discomfort of the examination? I wanted to say, but held back. What qualifies as unusual? Any pain different from what you've already described? No, I don't think so. I didn't need to tell you that this was not what I wanted to hear. Why would she ask that? Had she found something concerning? I quieted my thoughts and tried to focus on anything else until the exam was over. All right, Amber, Dr. Patel began, reviewing her notes. I believe you have a pelvic cyst, likely caused by a bacterial infection. They're uncommon, but they do occur. I applied gentle pressure to it, but you didn't report additional pain, which is unusual, though not impossible. I'm prescribing azithromycin, an antibiotic. Your discomfort should subside within about 3 days, but complete the full course. Any questions? None. Thank you. Great. Follow up with your primary care provider if symptoms persist. Will do. Great. I have an infection. Thanks, Impulsive Amber, for that lovely parting gift. However, I was relieved to have a diagnosis. Perhaps too relieved. If I'd given it more thought, I might have questioned why the pain originated near my ovaries rather than where the cyst was supposedly located. Well, 3 days passed, and despite my hopes, the pain didn't decrease. In fact, it intensified dramatically. By the 3rd day, I had to call in sick to work because every movement felt like being stabbed with a screwdriver. I'd been taking the antibiotics exactly as prescribed, twice daily, but they seemed completely ineffective. I was growing increasingly frustrated, as I really didn't want to return to the clinic. But what choice did I have? Clearly, the diagnosis was incorrect if my symptoms were supposed to improve within 3 days. Before making another appointment, I decided to perform a self-examination to see what I could detect. Maybe I was overreacting, and the cyst was actually shrinking. If so, I might avoid another medical visit. Wincing through waves of pain, I carefully examined myself. Everything seemed normal until I reached a couple inches inside. My fingertips tapped against something solid. I yanked my hand away instantly and lay on the bathroom floor, frozen. Adrenaline coursed through my body, temporarily numbing the pain in my pelvis. For nearly a full minute, my mind couldn't process what had happened. What was that? I briefly considered that maybe I just touched a pelvic bone, but that made no anatomical sense. No, it wasn't a bone. I could tell it wasn't part of my body the way you can feel the difference between your natural nails and artificial ones. My heart pounded, and my hands trembled. I cautiously reached down and tried to feel it again. When my fingers made contact, my stomach lurched, but I kept them there. I moved my fingers outward. The surface was slightly curved. I pushed gently against it, and it shifted. Something jabbed into my bladder, and momentarily, every internal part touching this object felt increased pressure, like when you swallow a too large bite of food and can feel its shape as it moves down your throat. I yelped and quickly withdrew my hand. I closed my eyes and whispered countless prayers. With shaking hands, I called emergency services. 911, what's your emergency? My voice breaking, I explained my situation as best I could, omitting the part about the object. I was in severe pain and needed hospital transport. That's all they needed to know for now. The paramedics asked if I might be pregnant, given the location of my pain. No, I'm not pregnant. Do I look pregnant to you? A charged question that silenced the 2 responders in the ambulance with me. They administered pain medication, and the agony subsided. But nothing could erase the feeling of that object shifting inside me when I pressed on it. Needless to say, I was rather disoriented for the next few hours while they admitted me and connected me to N4. A blur of medical staff moved in and out of the room, and by the time they scheduled me for an MRI, I was mostly alert again, though the pain was returning. Being in the MRI machine was a claustrophobic nightmare. I tried to comfort myself by imagining I was in a space capsule like in those sci-fi movies I love, but that just reminded me of alien abduction scenarios, which wasn't helpful at all. Nothing unusual happened during the MRI, and I was waiting for another dose of medication when a doctor entered with a folder of images. Well, he began, shuffling the papers nervously. I'm not quite sure how to say this, but is there any possibility you place something inside yourself and don't remember? Absolutely not, I replied firmly. I clenched my jaw as waves of pain intensified again. What is it? Perhaps it's better if you see for yourself. He handed me one of the sheets. I examined it carefully. It was a cross-sectional image of my pelvic region. I could see my organs in what I presumed were their normal positions, though I couldn't identify specific structures. I traced upward from my lower body to where I knew the object was located. An oval shape sat in the center, approximately 2 by 3 inches, pressing outward against surrounding tissues. Its edges were smoothly rounded, and inside it was a strange, twisted form I couldn't comprehend. What am I looking at? My voice cracked. We believe it's, He cleared his throat. An egg. Excuse me, it's an egg. We don't know what type of egg, but it is definitely an egg. And how did it get there? I didn't put it there. He nodded. Yes, we can tell. It appears to have originated in your reproductive tract and then expanded, creating pressure on surrounding organs and bones. You're feeling pain higher up because the pressure has caused a hairline fracture in your pelvic bone, which you can see is that thin line across your pubis. This was too much information. My head felt like it was imploding. Can you remove it? I could barely breathe. I was drowning in a tidal wave of pain, disgust, and medical terminology. At this point, I didn't care what it was or how it got there. I just wanted it out of my body. Technically, yes, the doctor replied, but there are risks. There's a risk in leaving it inside too. He nodded slowly. Agreed. You'll need to sign consent forms for surgery. I should warn you this will be an invasive procedure, and there's a possibility it could affect your fertility. I gritted my teeth against another wave of abdominal pain. Okay, I grunted. If this is what pregnancy feels like, I think I'll pass anyway. Very well. He opened the door and gestured. A nurse in navy scrubs entered with a clipboard. She placed it on my lap, and I scrawled a shaky signature. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. It was another hour of steadily increasing pain before I saw anyone else. Imagine the worst cramp of your life multiplied by 10, plus the sensation of something alive pressing against your internal organs. And the pain only escalated, as if the egg was continuing to grow. I could feel that hairline fracture now. The pressure was literally splitting the bone incrementally. We're ready now, a nurse said, though I barely registered her voice. My vision was blurry, and cool air brushed against my damp cheeks. I hadn't realized I was crying. The metallic click, click, click of the gurney wheels on the hospital floor felt like someone hammering nails into my skull. It seemed to take forever to reach the operating room. I wiped the tears from my eyes as a masked and gowned doctor opened the door. Their hands gently slid beneath me and transferred me to the operating table. Bright lights shone overhead, being adjusted to illuminate my lower body. The clinks and clatters of surgical instruments on metal trays. The smell of antiseptic and iodine filled my nostrils, and I coughed. The movement sent a jolt up my spine. I cried out, "Have you ever had general anesthesia before, honey?" Kind eyes above a surgical mask looked down at me. "No," I managed to say. "Don't worry about a thing. Here's the mask. I want you to take a deep breath and count backward from 10. All right?" Soft plastic pressed against my face as I inhaled the warm, sweet-smelling gas. I didn't bother counting because at that point I didn't care. I only wanted to sleep and wake when it was over. Gravity seemed to pull my tense muscles down until they felt like wet sand. I melted into the table and prepared to drift off. My eyelids grew heavy, but didn't close completely. I tried to force them shut, but they remained partially open. I wasn't losing consciousness. Shouldn't the anesthesia be working by now? My brain tried to signal my arm to get the nurse's attention, but nothing happened. I couldn't move. The nurse removed the mask and set it aside. She glanced at my face, her surgical mask expanding and contracting with each breath. "She's under. Go ahead, sir." 100 screams built within my chest, but I had no strength to release them. I was paralyzed. I was merely eyes above an immobile body. The feeling of rubber as gloved hands opened my mouth. A smooth tube slid down my throat, and artificial breath inflated my lungs. Ready. Scalpel. Light reflected off a stainless steel blade. Gloved hands lifted my gown to expose my lower abdomen. The blade's tip touched my skin just below my navel and drew a straight, red line across. I felt nothing physically. I was numb. Panic overwhelmed my mind. I needed more oxygen. I wanted to hyperventilate, to breathe faster and scream. I needed to calm down. If I could endure, it would soon be over. I had to trust the medical team. I had faith in them. Surgical instruments widened the incision. Oh God, the surgeon's hand entered my body. It's intact, he said. We need to proceed carefully. Nausea roiled within me. I appreciated their caution, despite my horrifying situation. The surgeon grunted and withdrew his blood-covered hand. Let them in. A knock at the door. Hushed whispers. 2 shadowy figures moved into the light, neatly trimmed beard outlining his strong jaw. His hazel eyes crinkled in a subtle smile. Nathan? What the? A woman stood beside him. Though she wore a long white coat, her auburn hair was just as striking as it had been at the gastropub on Monday. Status? Danny asked. It appears ready, madam, the surgeon replied. Perhaps another day would bring it to full maturity, but I'm not certain we could maintain the subject under sedation for that long. Danny turned to Nathan and said something incomprehensible. It sounded like a baby's babbling mixed with the subtle clicking of an insect. His lips parted, and a long, forked tongue flickered toward her. This defied all logic. My mind was lost in a void of confusion and terror, and all I could do was watch helplessly. The elder accepts. Extract it. The surgeon nodded and returned to my body. His hands slid into the surgical opening, and the tendons in his wrists flexed as he grasped the object. The egg. As he slowly lifted it out, I saw it for the first time. My bleeding flesh stretched around a sphere the size of a cantaloupe, covered in red-streaked mucus. Its surface appeared textured but solid. A thick, pulsing tube dangled from it, resembling a blood vessel. It grew taut as the egg moved away from me, and I realized it was connected like an umbilical cord. Elder, the surgeon said respectfully, presenting the egg to Nathan. What is happening? My panic intensified, and the breathing tube wasn't helping. My vision sparkled with colored dots as if I were about to faint, but consciousness remained. Nathan accepted the egg, unbothered by my bodily fluids coating his fingers. Scissors. The surgeon positioned the blades around the tube and cut. A spray of yellowish fluid splattered across my body and the surgical team's gowns. A profound silence filled the room as everyone watched Nathan. The faint hum of medical equipment seemed deafening. He examined the egg with tender care and cradled it in his arm. He pressed his index finger against the shell, cracked slightly, then broke. Fine lines webbed across it, and most of the shell crumbled to the floor. A flood of thick liquid cascaded over his arms, but he remained motionless. Within the shattered shell lay what appeared to be a human infant in fetal position. But it was wrong. Instead of a nose, a sharp, bony protrusion extended. Loose membranes stretched from its tiny arms, enveloping its torso, and its lower body was covered by a slick, scaled appendage. If I could have screamed, I would have. Well done, Danny murmured. Nathan didn't respond but began opening his mouth. His head jerked backward, and 2 elongated structures emerged like a bird's beak. A gurgling sound rose from his throat as he lifted the infant, placing it between his protruding jaws. He tilted his head back, and his hazel eyes bulged as the creature slid down his throat and disappeared. His hands reached out and grabbed Danny, pulling her close. She opened her mouth wide, and he inserted the saliva-covered tips of his beak-like appendages. His chest heaved, and his throat convulsed. A partially digested limb slid into her mouth, and she stepped backward, chewing forcefully. As she consumed her portion, the surgeon moved forward and received similar treatment. This continued until everyone in the room had partaken in the feeding. By now, my mind felt detached and distant, as if floating through a nightmare. I couldn't process what I was witnessing. Nathan's head jerked, and the fleshy beak retracted into his mouth. He wiped his lips and silently left the room. Clean her up and reset her memory, Danny said, gesturing toward me. Make sure she's prepared for next month's offering. Thank you. I woke up in my bedroom today, and that's where I am now. I can hear my girlfriend making breakfast, just as she did the day she left. The same aroma of pancakes and coffee. I have no idea what happened to me or what I saw, but I know that when I return from work today, my girlfriend will be gone, and I will likely have an inexplicable urge to visit a bar. Whatever these beings normally do to erase my memory failed this time. I don't know why or how. If anyone reads this, I need help. Please. If they discover I remember, I don't know what they'll do to me. Should I pretend I remember nothing? Should I barricade myself in my apartment? Please help me.